Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you for joining me wherever you are in the world. My name is Jason Levine, and today I'm here to present to you part 4 of how to make great videos, with a focus today on fixing common audio issues. I'm going to show you a lot of the fundamentals here for kind of working with audio problems. And typically, you'd be sending audio from Premiere Pro. Now, I'll show you some workflows in Premiere, but we're going to focus a lot today on working in Audition. Now, if you've never used Adobe Audition, that might sound a little intimidating. This is going to be easy, and I'm going to talk you through sort of the process of understanding different ways to see common audio problems. And yes, you heard me right, to see them, to visually identify them, and then to use some common techniques that you know even from Photoshop to repair those problems. So let's go ahead and start here. And once again, we're going to feature for a couple of these examples this film See You Around, directed by Oren Brimmer. And you can find this short film on Vimeo. It's absolutely hilarious. I highly recommend it to check it out. It's just very funny, and the characters are great. And this is actually one of their original sequences. And we're going to start today just talking a little bit about, again, essential sound and dialogue mixing. Very simple, though. We're not going to go into a lot of detail here. Now, you can also find a tutorial, or I should say, you can also find a tutorial of mine just released on just using the Essential Sound panel in Premiere on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/JasonLevineVideo. That's going to be specific to all the things you can do with Essential Sound. For this, we're going to focus and start focusing here just directly on dialogue. All right, so here we have a scene, our main character here who's visiting with 2 psychologists. And what I want you to do is just take a listen to this kind of clean, raw, unmixed version. Off the top, it sounds pretty good, but I'm going to show you how we can kind of reveal some issues that are in there, and then how we're going to repair them using very simple sliders and techniques using this Essential Sound panel. So take a quick listen to this, and I'm going to mute myself very quickly so you can hear it a bit more cleanly. Here we go.
Right. All right, Thomas, let's talk about you. Let's do some therapy.
What's going on? How was your week?
What's been going on with me? I'm trying to get over someone. Mm-hmm. My ex.
And has this been affecting your day-to-day life at all?
So if you're listening in headphones, if you got your listening ears on in a quiet environment, and I muted myself because, of course, my computer fans while streaming are very active. It sounds okay. Now, again, when you start processing dialogue, and obviously this was largely, I'm guessing, captured with boom mics in the room. We don't see any labs or anything like that. I don't see any microphones placed anywhere else. You're probably going to start to reveal some of the issues of the room that it was captured in. And based on the gain, just looking at the audio file here, it looks pretty healthy, but I can also see a pretty healthy amount of noise. Now, noise should not be confused with basic room tone. And you can actually see that the director here captured room tone as well. Now, just very briefly, before we even process anything, what is room tone? Well, this is something, particularly if you're capturing, a scene. What you want to do is actually record just the sound of the room when no one is talking, no one's doing anything. And this can be the sound of the room with all the noises that are going on in it, whether it's a fan or air conditioning or whatever, just to get the sound of the room. Because what happens is when you start to process particularly dialogue, especially in a case where you have to do a bit of denoising, or sometimes even if the dialogue is super clean, the problem is it's too clean and it doesn't feel like it's in that environment anymore. Having room tone, discrete room tone recorded, basically allows you to very quickly and automatically place that character back into the room. Now, as I'll show you here, you can use additional features inside of Essential Sound to further enhance the room, the ambience of the environment you're in, whether it's a small meeting room, small classroom, or a big cathedral, or whatever it is. I'll show you how to access those things. So the first thing we're going to do to work with Essential Sound is make sure that we're in the new audio workspace inside of Premiere. So you should see this at the top of your interface. If you don't, you can also find this under Window, Workspaces, Audio. Now you're seeing a lot of my custom workspaces in here as well. And this was a previous one that I had made. But we're going into the audio workspace. There's also our color correction and graphics workspaces, which are new in the latest 2017 update. So when you do that, you'll see the Essential Sound panel docked on the right. Now, the way that this works is You basically select your dialogue, and this can be one or multiple clips inside of your timeline. And then in Essential Sound, all you need to do is tell Premiere what type of audio is this. We're going to assign an audio type. So for this, we're simply going to choose dialogue, with the proper spelling, by the way. So we choose dialogue. And when we do that, as I've said many times over, this now reveals all of the commonly encountered effects and filters that you would use to process dialogue. So one of the great things about this is, you know, if you're a non-audio pro, you might be thinking, all right, I need to remove, you know, some of the noise, or I might need to remove, there's some like low-end rumble. Maybe I want to make it clearer or equalize it, but you don't know where to access those effects. Maybe you don't even know what they're called, right? So this is going to reveal all of those things for you in a very easy to view, easy to understand panel, and give you very simple controls, but there's a lot of power going on in the background, and I'll show you that too. Now that we've got this track defined as dialogue, what you'll see again at the top here is a couple of things we can do. Now, I've talked about this before. I'm not going to go too much into this because we've just got one dialogue clip here. But this first one is very essential, and this is called Loudness Auto-Matching. Why this is great is because if you have multiple audio clips, multiple pieces of dialogue, what this can do is if you select all of those dialogue clips and then click Auto Match, I want to zoom in here so you can see the tooltip, it automatically matches clips to a standard average loudness for dialogue. This is huge because, again, think about it. When you have different actors speaking, different characters speaking, all at different volumes, right? All at different sort of average loudness levels. I speak on the microphone all the time, so I tend to be very even when I'm speaking, whether I'm on a microphone or just talking in general. But again, if you're an actor and you're in a scene, you're in an environment, and it's noisy or it's just, again, you're kind of doing lines, it's not uncommon, based on wherever the microphones are and how it's being captured, that your levels may vary. And the levels are certainly going to vary between different speakers, right? So simply by clicking Auto Match, this will match all of your dialogue to the same, not peak level, right? We're not talking about the loudest portion, right? You see those little peaks when you look at the audio waveforms? This is me simulating a peak, boop, 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 you know. This is the average listening level. So whether they're even whispering or maybe not shouting, but the idea is that the way that your brain perceives that average listening level, Auto Match is going to do that for you. And this feature is available in Essential Sound for every type of audio type. So whether it's music, ambience, sound effects, and think about that. When you have music in a video and you have, the title sequence, which is, rocking, and then you get to the scene in the psychologist's office and it's kind of, slower and more mellow. You're usually doing a lot of enveloping or keyframing and using Beziers to kind of ramp the music in and out and adjust the listening level. This is going to say, okay, whether it's rock or jazz or hip hop or classical, the average listening level of all of those will be matched to the same. All right. So this is an amazing feature. Now, beyond that, you'll see that the first thing we'll reveal below that is something called repair. And in the repair section here, we have the ability to reduce noise, rumble, hum, 60 or 50 cycle, depending upon which side of the pond you're on, and DeEssing, which is for sibilance. And this is particularly useful if you're capturing someone. You'll encounter this particularly if you're using, again, like a shotgun mic, and someone who just has a lot of over-accentuated S sounds. And sometimes that S can sound like someone's cutting through your eardrum, right? And it just depends. It depends on the speaker. It also depends on the microphone and the polar pattern of the microphone, meaning how wide or narrow it captures. So hold on, I'm moving my hands in. So some microphones, like an Omni, captures, well, I can't even do Omni. Omni captures from all around, all right? And then you have a cardioid pattern, which is it kind of rejects audio in the rear, back here, but everything in the front is captured. And then you have hypercardioid and supercardioid, meaning those are those little, laser pointer type focal points where it's only going to capture audio in this very defined area. Oftentimes that'll accentuate, and it's not only S sounds, it can be T's, it can be all kinds of things. So the de-esser removes that. Now, before we even get there, to be able to reveal what's actually going on inside that dialogue clip, we're going to focus first here on clarity, or more importantly, dynamics. More specifically, dynamic compression. Now, we're not talking about file compression here, right? So this is using a compressor limiter to not only amplify, but to control, again, any sort of out-of-band peaks, and to really emphasize and bring that audio up front, okay? Now, compression is very difficult to set manually, and if you're not an audio pro, it's probably the easiest thing to do incorrectly, to mess it up. But we've taken that pain away and made it really easy with this dynamics clarity slider. So I'm going to, it's already soloed here, so I'm going to wind this back, and I'm going to turn on dynamics, and I'm going to start dragging this slider from natural to focused. And what you'll see is that the audio, it's going to get a little bit louder, but it's just going to get just clearer and more up front. But what you'll also hear is that we're going to start to reveal some of the things that are inside of that audio file, namely a lot of low-end kind of rumble, some noise, and some other things. All right, so take a quick listen, and I'll mute myself again so you can hear this very clean. Here we go.
Right. All right, Thomas, let's talk about you. Let's do some therapy.
What's going on? How was your week?
What's been going on with me? I'm trying to get over someone. My ex.
And has this been affecting your day-to-day life at all?
No.
Now, obviously, we've got dialogue spaced apart, so you kind of have to imagine all these things closer together. But you can hear that as I drag that slider towards focused, everything came more into focus. And particularly if you've got music underneath, and I'll show you this in a moment, or other elements, what this single slider will do is it's going to let that dialogue, let the voices, let your story, which is what this is all about, sit on top of everything else, right? So without dynamic compression, a lot of times you get that, hi, I'm, like things get louder and softer, and you lose the message, you lose the story. Dynamic compression allows you to solidify that and really keep it focused and sit on top of everything. The more dynamic compression you use, the more your voices, your dialogue can sit on top of everything else in your mix, okay? Now, more importantly, what it did though when we did that, because this is recorded clearly in this room with all this is like a live production capture, you heard all this rumble, right? All this noise going on in the background. So the first thing we're going to do here is attack the rumble, all right? And you can see we've got this reduce rumble slider here. So if I wind this back all the way to 0, let's go ahead and do the same thing here. I'm going to start to play this, and then I'm going to slowly increase the reduce rumble until we get rid of those low frequency sounds. And you can see this can even do a bit of plosive removal. We'll talk about that in just a bit. Take a listen again. And I won't mute myself this time. I'll do it after I kind of find the sweet spot. Here we go.
Right. Thomas, some therapy.
What's going on? How was your week?
What's been going on with me? I'm trying to get over someone. My ex.
And has this been affecting your day-to-day life at all?
Okay, so right there is a really great example. You can hear in that silence, it's almost like a jet engine. You hear this kind of thing going on when the rumbler was taken off. When I put it back on, that's gone, and the voices just come through, all right? So getting rid of a lot of that low frequency, right? A lot of times that stuff is really irritating. Now, how is rumble different from hum? Well, because hum is specific to actual frequencies here. Whether you're, again, in Europe or on that side, 50 cycles, here in the US and South America, 60 cycles, okay? So, North America, South America, I should say. So, and that is a specific actual tone, right? And all the subsequent harmonics of that hum. It actually sounds like, Sometimes you get that on set. Sometimes you get that in productions. It's not the same as rumble, though. Rumble actually extends even further below. So it can be a lot of that subsonic noise. And you encounter this when you record outside a lot, sometimes, around 40 hertz. And again, it's really that stuff that kind of, it moves you, and it's like a truck rolling by. That's not hum, that's rumble. So that's an example of where you use reduce rumble. Now, outside of that, there's also a bit of noise going on here. So once again, we can use the noise reduction slider, and I'm just going to set this not very aggressively to around, let's say 1.7, and play this back for you now, and I'm going to mute myself now with everything on. Now, one last thing I want to do here is, because we had that room tone captured, let's go ahead and play this back. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on the room tone track so you can actually hear what it sounds like when we bring a little bit of that natural room sound back. Because after we enable the noise reduction, things are going to get a little sterile sounding. So I'm going to unmute this track 11 here, and you'll see how it kind of brings back the natural sound of the room.
Right. All right, Thomas, let's talk about you. Let's do some therapy.
What's going on? How was your week?
What's been going on with me? I'm trying to get over someone. My ex.
And has this been affecting your day-to-day life at all?
No. Not really. But I'd like to move on.
I see.
Now, could you hear that? I really hope so. Clearly you could hear that when we turned on everything, the noise was gone, the rumble was gone, the voices were clean, they were all the same listening level, and it was good, maybe a little too sterile. And I showed you the on and off. So when I turned off repair, you could really hear all that. You could hear everything coming back in, right? Cool. And then simply by adding back in some of that room tone. Now you might say, well, didn't you just put the noise back in there? Well, yes, a little bit, but again, just a subtle amount to put you back in the environment. Now, theoretically, you could do the same thing on that room tone and maybe derumble that a bit if necessary, or reduce a bit of the noise. Although I wouldn't recommend that on room tone, because that's the natural sound of what's going on in there. And particularly in a scene, in a film, that's okay. 20 years ago, when noise reduction was kind of new, there was a tendency to overdo it, to make things super sterile. Now, one thing that you can do to, again, further enhance the environment that the actors, the speakers are in, I'm going to drop the room tone just about a dB or so, is that we also give you the option here to add some room reverb. And you can see it here under Creative. And if I enable reverb, now let me go to this little twirl down, you'll see that there's a whole bunch of presets that we give you here. Auditorium, church, outside the club, small dry room, thickened voice, warm room, warm voice. Now, again, these are just some suggested presets. If we go to something like small dry room, let me go ahead and wind this back. I'll start with nothing and then I'll increase it, and you'll see that you kind of have to find a good spot. Now, I particularly like to add a little bit of small dry room or something similar, and I'll show you how you can have more options to these kinds of scenes, particularly if it's going to be shown like in a theater. It just really makes everything kind of pop and jump out and seem a little less dry, a little less sterile, because it's a dry room. So take a quick listen to this and you'll hear what I'm doing. And I'll kind of go extreme and then I'll dial it back. Here we go.
What's been going on with me? I'm trying to get over someone. My ex.
And has this been affecting your day-to-day life at all?
No.
Okay. Now, just to show you something opposite of that, let's go to large reflective room. So if you're not sort of familiar with room ambience and reverb, here's what that would sound like.
What's been going on with me? I'm trying to get over someone. My ex.
And has this been affecting your day-to-day life at all?
Now, actually, that larger room with a setting of about 1.8, I actually happen to like the sound of that. To me, that sounds pretty good. And it doesn't sound totally unnatural. Now, again, you're going to have to play around with this a bit more. Whether it's small or large, that's up to you. Now, what I want to show you here is that you actually have more control outside of these specific presets and the single slider. So if you go to your effects controls up here, what this is actually showing you, in fact, is that it's applying all of these different real-time effects non-destructively at the clip level. So you only see as the editor, again, you're trying to make good videos here, you're not an audio pro, we're giving you one slider to make it easy. But actually, if you open up something like adaptive noise reduction, which again is up here in repair, when I move that slider, I want you to take a look here. It's actually moving multiple parameters inside this noise reduction effect. And in fact, it's doing a bit of machine learning, right? A little bit of AI here to really understand what's happening in your audio to make it sound better. It's not simply more or less. It looks like that to you with a single slider. Oh, sure, less rumble, more rumble. But no, it's actually reconfiguring multiple parameters simultaneously. Similarly with dynamics processing, and this is one of the greatest things that we have here, this is automatically setting what we call the threshold levels. Threshold is the point at which audio dynamic compression begins. And if you don't exceed that threshold based on the ratio that you have set, again, this is getting super nerdy and technical, you're not going to compress properly. This is where people and compression falls apart. This is, again, using machine learning, a little something we call Adobe Sensei. It's analyzing the audio. It's analyzing the actual input levels of all of the audio here. And then based on what you set this slider to, it's reconfiguring the entire compressor to work properly against your audio, which is super, super cool, all right? This is kind of the power of that. And by the way, you'll notice there's presets in each one of these here. So you can find even more, all right? So things like rock vocal, if you're mixing, dialogue or something for a music video. Maybe you're actually mixing a music video. You're going to find specific cool presets in here. Also, additionally, if we go into the reverb, which is, again, the creative reverb and essential sound, lots more presets. I can tell you right now that if you're trying to add a little bit of ambient sound back into a voiceover or dialogue in a scene, Room Ambience 1 and 2, give these a try. These are really, really good, really effective. And then you have some very simple adjustments here. Wet and dry balance. Dry signal, again, is going to be that native signal coming right off of the file. And then the wet signal is just that. It's the amount of room ambience that you're adding, okay? So if I were to choose something like this Room Ambience 2, I'll put 100% dry. Let me go ahead and just play this back, and you'll see what happens when I adjust the wet slider here.
What's been going on with me? I'm trying to get over someone.
Mm-hmm. Now you've even got, again, for those of you who are more audio inclined, you can roll off the highs at a particular frequency. So here it's kind of cutting everything above 6,500 hertz. 6,500 hertz, by the way, is right around the top of the sweet spot where that sibilance occurs. So if you roll everything off there, again, naturally the room won't accentuate sibilance. And similarly, you'd ever want to reverberate or create or add ambience to like low frequency signals. So you can see here it's cutting all the low frequency below 225 hertz. 225 is right kind of in the middle of what we call mud, audio mud. And below. You don't want to add reverb or room ambience to rumble, to any low frequency. It's just going to become a big sonic mess. So again, that's kind of factored into a lot of these presets here. So just to kind of show you a little final version of this, sounds very similar to the one we just heard. But this kind of gives you kind of a fully mixed version with the room ambience and everything else added back in. So here, take a quick listen to this, and I'll mute myself again.
Right. All right, Thomas, let's talk about you. Let's do some therapy.
What's going on? How was your week?
What's been going on with me? I'm trying to get over someone.
Mm-hmm.
My ex.
And has this been affecting your day-to-day life at all?
No.
Pretty cool, right? All right, so moving on. Do we like essential sound? Now, I spent a lot of time in here, so I hope you use this. All right, so now we're going to bounce out of Premiere and just assume that I've sent over audio to Audition. This is a really cool feature. So you have a couple options here. If there's something that you can't fix on the Premiere side, you can send that audio directly to Audition by saying Edit Clip in Adobe Audition, okay? You also have the ability to send the entire sequence with dynamically streamed video from the Premiere Pro timeline by going up to the Edit menu, Edit in Adobe Audition, Sequence, okay? And this will actually package up the entire sequence. It'll send the video via dynamic link, meaning that there's no render involved here. It's super fast. You can add audio handles, and then it'll actually transfer any audio clip effects that you have or track effects as well. Remember, Essential Sound is working at the clip level, but if you added effects in the audio track mixer, all of those will carry over non-destructively over to the Audition side, even including third-party VSTs. So I've already done some of that and sent some clips over to Audition. And the first one I want to show you here kind of fixes the problem that you will likely encounter if you do a lot of audio capture, which is digitally clipped or over-modulated audio. Now, what does that sound like? Okay, well, this is from an interview that I shot a couple of years ago. And my sound guy, who was very good, was watching the meters in Audition, but he wasn't watching the actual input level on the device, which was actually clipping. And when you have clipped audio, as you can see here, the waveform will appear flat-topped, squared off. And that is not good. It should look kind of free-form and more waveform-like. And if we zoom in all the way, you'll see that there's actually, it really does square off in certain sections here. So we got to repair those squared off bits. So here's what we can do. Take a quick listen to this. I'm going to mute myself so you can hear what it sounds like. And in this case, let me just play back a little bit of this for a second here.
Filling in for Johnny Carson and actually interviewing.
Okay, so where he says actually interviewing.
Johnny Carson and actually interviewing.
All right. And then again over here, he says on the couch.
On the couch.
There's a bit of distortion. And then over here, he says Kurt Gowdy.
Kurt Gowdy.
All right, now I'm going to mute myself so you can hear these very discreetly and actually hear the distortion that's happening. All right, take a quick listen to this.
Johnny Carson and actually interviewing the Beatles. Johnny Carson and actually interviewing the Beatles. On the couch. On the couch. Minor. Kurt Gowdy. Kurt Gowdy. Kurt Gowdy.
Now again, if you're listening to this in headphones or kind of on a nice, loud, quiet system, you can actually hear when he says those words, you can hear the distortion. It gets a little crunchy, you know. You can actually hear that kind of crunchy, distorted, over-modulated sound. Now, digitally, when we capture audio, we're working in what's known as a negative logarithmic scale, meaning that if you're capturing 24-bit, which most of your devices, whether you're working with a Zoom or a Tascam or any flavor thereof, usually will capture audio at 24-bit resolution. What that means is that you have approximately 140 decibels of dynamic range. And that negative logarithmic scale means that minus 140 or minus infinity, as you'll often see, and you can see that inside of Audition's waveform display here, that is the quietest signal, right? And 0, again, represented by the top of the scale here, is the loudest, okay? So there's no +1, +10, +50. That's the analog days. Digitally, 0 is as loud as we can get, and we never want to be at 0. You never want to be at 0. I've seen some tutorials like, yeah, oh no, you can go up to 0. You can. Don't. It doesn't buy you anything. Your brain can't even interpret a change in amplitude that's less than a dB, just FYI. So if you're trying to crunch everything up to 0, it doesn't matter. You could be at minus 1.5, and between minus 1.5 and 0, your brain's going to hear it pretty much the same, all right? Give or take, a quarter or 1/10 of a dB, whatever it is. So when you heard those sounds, I did turn my mic back on, right? Okay. When you heard those sounds, how do you fix them? Well, we have something in Audition called the Diagnostics panel. Now, once again, you may not see it already docked. You can find it under the Window menu, Diagnostics, all right? And in the Diagnostics panel, we have something here called the DeClipper. You will also find the DeClipper, all right? Now, for this, because we have digitally clipped audio, we're going to use the DeClipper. Now, once again, one of my favorite things, and Terry White says this all the time, presets mean goodness. It helps us to get started. These presets in particular are all you'll ever need for this effect, frankly. You do have manual settings, but we're going to focus and keep this easy today. So we want to restore this audio to normal. Is it lightly clipped? Is it heavily clipped? What does that even mean? Those are sort of arbitrary. It's heavily clipped to me. It's clipped. It sounds bad, right? So light or heavy, I'm not even going to make you choose. Just bring it back to normal, all right? Now, sometimes you may have to choose one of the others. I'm going to show you this with restore normal, okay? And then you'll notice there's a scan button here, scan for problems using selected diagnostics. So let's go ahead and click scan. It's almost instantaneous. And right away it tells us, let me zoom in down here so you can see, it found 91 instances of that same kind of clipped, distorted sound. Now, this was just so you know, this was not staged, this was not made for this demo or for some demo years ago. This was the actual interview, which was with a dude that was very high power guy, one chance to get this shoot, one opportunity, and that was it. And of course, I didn't know that I had 91 distorted sections until I got back to the studio and watched and listened back to the secondary audio. So effectively, I was in trouble, right? Well, this is kind of, again, some of that Adobe magic. Not trying to be salesy, trying to just tell you this saved my day. Just as someone said, Essential Sound and Dynamics Clarity saved their day. This one can sometimes do it for you. So I'm going to click Scan. It scans. I'm going to click Repair All. Now I want you to pay attention. All right? Watch the peaks of this waveform. Watch how visually these things change. Are you ready? Let's go ahead and Repair All. And look at what has happened. Do you remember how these things were square? These were completely flat-topped. Look at them now. Now they look like the other waveforms. And again, if we were to zoom in here, you can see that it looks like it should, right? Before it was very jagged. It didn't look right. It was wrong. It was digitally distorted. It was digitally clipped. So now let's take a listen to these. And again, I'll mute myself and you can hear it. And what I'll do is I'll play them back through. I'll undo, redo, and let you hear it again with my sound off so you can really hear what this did. Take a quick listen.
For Johnny Carson and actually interviewing the Beatles on the couch, you know, Kurt Gowdy. Carson and actually interviewing on the couch, Kurt Gowdy. Carson and actually interviewing the Beatles on the couch, you know, Kurt Gowdy.
Now, if that isn't Adobe magic, I don't know what is. Now, is this going to work on everything? Probably not, just as I said. You have to give it a try. Typically, if you've got a signal that's digitally clipped by around 10 dB, all right, you got a bit of headroom there. And again, it has to have been recorded in at least 24-bit. And I say that, I realize that's getting a little technical here. A lot of your devices, including your Zooms and your Tascams and even like Key Pros and things, will give you options to record your audio in 16-bit. Here's something that I'm going to say definitively. Don't ever do that. Yes, the files will be smaller. The problem is, it is basically the audio equivalent at 16-bit of it's not really JPEG. Like, I wouldn't say that 24-bit is RAW and 16-bit is JPEG, but it kind of is because you're limiting your dynamic range significantly by nearly 50 plus dB. And what that means is when you have clipped signals, if you try and repair them, the repair may not be as successful. So you want to make sure at a minimum you're always capturing your audio at 24-bit. You can see we're working natively in 32-bit float. That's what Audition works in natively. That's what Premiere Pro works in natively. It can work on 16-bit audio. I'm just telling you that typically you want that to be 24-bit, 32-bit. You're going to get better results. All right, so that's a bit of declipping. Now, in the description today, it talked about how to remove the sound of a siren. Okay, so I found a demo file that we had from a couple years ago from this documentary about Danny Way called Waiting for Lightning, directed by Jacob Rosenberg. And this clip actually had a siren in it. Take a listen. And here we're using what's called our spectral frequency display. This is showing frequency over time. Take a quick listen to this.
When I think of a trick, I don't know, when I'm sitting in my house, so I come down here and learn it.
All right, now I'm going to show you this real quickly because this is, again, something that it's not going to work for everything, but it's something that I like to reveal because this can get pretty cool, all right? So in the spectral frequency display, we're actually looking at frequency over time. Frequency on our Y vertical axis here, again, 0 hertz all the way at the bottom. And based on the sample rate of your file, this is probably a 48K file. So yeah, so the top here, this is 24 kilohertz, all right? And then the colors that you see represent amplitude. The brighter the color, the louder the amplitude at that particular frequency. The darker the color, the quieter the amplitude at that particular frequency. And then you have all the gradients in between. So using some of our Photoshop style tools, you'll see up here that I have a spot healing brush, got a paintbrush. And if I choose my paintbrush and I adjust my brush size up at the top here, I'm going to identify and tell Audition exactly where that siren lives. And because I want to focus on the area here where he's talking, let's go ahead and start painting over the siren like this. All right. Now you'll see I've got my opacity set to 50. In Audition, 50 is the equivalent of 100 or totally opaque. So the more that I kind of roll over this, I want to kind of fill in all the gaps here. All right. Just like that. Now, I can then go up to Effects, or I can right-click or control-click, and I'm going to choose Learn Sound Model. Okay? And that's going to be captured, and it's going to learn the sound of that siren. Effects, Sound Remover, and this is what I wanted to really show you. Remove siren. Less artifacts. That's what I was going to show you with the dialogue there. To show you how we can really improve the sound of that. So let's turn that on. Let's go ahead and play this back now. And you can automatically hear that that siren is just, it's gone, right? Now let me just go ahead and increase the refinement passes here automatically. And let's turn down the complexity and play this back again.
I think of a trick. I don't know when I'm sitting in my house around here. I learn it.
All right. Now again, if that wasn't quite doing it, I could come back in here because this siren's a little bit different. Again, I'm just using my mouse here so you can see how brilliant my selection is being made. Like this. I'm having trouble getting it in the middle there. Learn the sound model. Let's deselect. Wind this back. Let's hit play.
I think of a trick. I don't know when I'm sitting in my house around here. I learn it.
All right. Here's the before.
I think of a trick. I don't know when I'm sitting in my house.
All right. And here's the after. And we can even turn on Enhance for speech.
I think of a trick. I don't know when I'm sitting in my house around here. I learn it.
All right. It's definitely better, right? And we even have a preset to remove sirens. Ringing cell phone removal. That's going to be if your phone uses like classic ringtones. Probably not using a lot of those anymore, but that's where you can find that. And that's in the sound remover. I wanted to just show you too. This is kind of something you're probably not going to run into very often, but here we have some ambient noise, crickets and tree frogs. All right. I can visually see where that tree frog is, so I'm going to make a selection like this. Right-click, Learn Sound Model. Now, obviously, we don't have a tree frog setting, so I'm just going to go with the defaults. Turn off Enhance for speech. Let's take a quick listen to this now. On here, I'll deselect. Now again, these were a little more complex, so I might have wanted to have selected these because they have more going on in this kind of upper mids. So we could make additional selections, right? But again, the before and the after. I mean, it's just gone, and there's no weird artifact. Like I said before, if we wanted to tackle this, I could make my selection like that, hold down Shift. All right, something like that. Learn sound model. Okay. Deselect. wind back. Okay, and it's virtually gone. So that's the sound remover. Now, using the same sort of visual technique, I'm going to show you very, very quickly. So I've shown this example a million times. I don't have any more examples of wind, so if you've heard this before, sorry. This is a friend who gave this to me, someone that I met at IBC, the IBC convention in Amsterdam years ago, and he had a lot of wind issues. Take a quick listen to this.
En op 28 mei 1932, 's middags om 2 minuten over 1, werd op deze plaats onder getoeter van de sleepboten en gejuich van de dijkwerkers.
Okay, so once again, we have a lot of noise. And when we're looking here visually, we can start to begin to identify with our eyes where the noise lives. And this is a very cool technique that you're going to want to revisit and probably rewatch this to really understand how this works. So the way that you tackle wind is that you need to divide it into the different types of noise that are present. Specifically, low-end rumble, which is often a common thing with wind. You get that kind of sound. And then you have the very high-end wispy kind of wind. And then you have everything that's kind of in the middle. And that's why wind is so hard, because a lot of the fundamentals of windiness live right in the same center frequency fundamentals as the human voice. Darn you, wind. So how do you tackle that? Well, you do it by making frequency-specific selections. So in the case of this very complex outdoor wind, we're going to use the Marquee tool, again, friends of Photoshop here. And we're going to make a selection down here. Now, again, I can look at the bottom. So I'm making a selection that's approximately from around 40 hertz, where we've got some subsonics, to around, let's say, 220 hertz, right in that low-end muddy range. And I can see that it's just that. These signals here, this is obviously, that's talking, right? That's talking. But we can see here that the rest is not. So here what I'm going to do is I'm going to right-click and I'm going to choose Capture Noise Print of just the rumble, okay? And I can play this back. And that's just the sound of the rumble. So now I'm going to capture a noise print, go into Effects, Noise Reduction, select the entire file, and one fundamental here, again, I'm going to make this easy for you. You want to set your spectral decay to 0. Why? Because we don't want to decay that rumble over time gently based on the amplitude of the content we want. We simply want to subtract it. So when you have spectral decay at 0%, it's basically in a subtractive mode. And then you're going to use your noise reduction slider to control the amount, how much. Now, because we're running out of time, I'm going to set this to around 80, let's do around 88%, click Apply. Now, the genius behind this effect and what it does, which you can see here, is that it actually removes the rumble, but it doesn't touch the low-end fundamentals of his or her speaking voice. So now when we play this back...
De overstroming gaf de doorslag. De Zuiderzee moest droog.
Again, here's the before.
De overstroming gaf de doorslag. De Zuiderzee...
And then here's the after.
Moest droog. Er werd begonnen met de afsluitdijk.
Okay, so it preserves that low end. Now people say, well, why didn't you just use an EQ and roll off everything below 200 hertz? Because it would have rolled off this. It would have taken this away. And for someone like me, especially who has a lot of low-end fundamental, I want to keep that there. I just want to get rid of the rumble. So again, you can do that. Now you also have the ability, you can see there's some stuff going on at the bottom down here. I can select something like that, which is some weird subsonic tone, and I can actually hit delete. And look at that. It just takes it out. That's right, friends. I can actually delete it out. You can see there was like some weird carrier tone going at like 40 hertz. Delete. And just get rid of all of that. Now, similarly, again, to tackle some of that mid and high range noise, I want to find a section that's just the noise itself. I'm going to capture a noise print, effects, noise reduction process, select the entire file. Now, here's where I want to use a little bit of spectral decay to kind of more gently remove that noise. So I'm going to set this to around 5-6%. Typically, I'll recommend anywhere from 5 to 20% for that mid-range noise. And now you sort of have to use the slider to hear where you're comfortable where it still sounds okay without too many artifacts. So let's play this back and I'll start adjusting this and let's hear what we can do.
De overstroming gaf de doorslag. De Zuiderzee moest droog. Er werd begonnen met de afsluitdijk. En op 28 mei...
All right, and we're going to apply that. And now what you see is that all of that noise in between is gone. And the reason that you're actually seeing a little bit of noise in between the speaking here is because it's decaying. After he finishes talking, it acts like a noise gate and just silences all that noise. So here is the original before it was processed.
De overstroming gaf de doorslag. De Zuiderzee...
And here is our after.
De overstroming gaf de doorslag. De Zuiderzee moest droog.
Now, it's not 100% perfect. We did this very quickly. But again, and he's outside too. So it's okay to have some of that environmental sound. This is where if you want to get creative and if it's in a film, you actually get sound effects and ambient tracks from a sound effects library and you place those in the background anyway. But now you have control over the voice, over the dialogue so that it doesn't really kind of get in the way, all right? Which is very, very cool. All right, so for the very last thing that I'm going to show you here, let's go ahead and show you Adobe Audition Remix, okay? And again, this allows you to dynamically recompose music to fit any audio duration, and you don't even have to do the editing yourself. It's going to do it all for you. So let's go ahead and select this, again, See You Around project here, where I have a soundtrack of a band playing. All right, here we go. All right, and here's our video. Again, you've seen this scene before. And down here we have some music. All right, let's take a quick listen. All right, I'm going to go in my Essential workspace here. And just as we saw before, I'm going to set this and tell it that this is in fact music. All right, so when I choose music, now you're going to see that there's an option here to adjust duration. And we can use remix or stretch. Stretch will do just that. It's going to use a stretching algorithm, so it won't affect pitch, just the duration, but sometimes stretching can make things sound a little bit weird. So I want to take this and I'm going to choose remix. When I click on remix, it's going to analyze the duration of the audio and it's going to analyze the beat structure and the harmonic structure. And it's going to figure out good areas to actually edit this music together. So here we have 1 minute and 32 seconds. Let's say that I wanted to make this 45 seconds in length. So I'm going to readjust this or maybe make it 40 seconds in length. When I do that and I type in the new duration, now what you see, these little wavy lines, is it's automatically created an edit point for me. So when I play this back, this should sound totally seamless and just kind of work. Take a quick listen. Do you hear that? And it did the edit for me. If I said, okay, you know what, I want this to be a minute, or say, let's say make it 2 minutes and 40 seconds. All right. Now again, it creates additional edits. I can say favor shorter segments. And now it's got a bunch of different edits in here. What? Yes, and it made it the exact duration that I need. And if you go even a step further, you'll see down here in the Properties panel, which again you can find in the Window menu, under the Remix option, you've got even more control to allow you to adjust the edit length. So shorter edits or longer edits, you can determine what they are by default here. Because I had favor shorter segments, it's going to 20, but you can make those segments even longer. You can tell it to focus more on the beat structure or the harmonic structure. You can say a minimum loop duration. So I don't want you to do an edit that's any shorter than 8 beats long, or even adjust the slack 5 seconds, you know, at the top or tail. And to give you even more control, what if you wanted to re-edit these sections or move those sections around yourself? You can right-click, go into Remix, and you'll see you have an option here to split remixed clip into segments. So when you do that, now we actually give you access to the crossfades. Now it's going to group them together. So selecting everything, you won't be able to move stuff around, which is good because the edits are done for you. But this is going to allow you to non-destructively adjust the crossfade between the edit points. But what if you just want these sections? Because you want to be able to kind of re-edit and remove things around, or maybe replace, you know, a chorus or a verse here. We're going to go into groups. We're going to ungroup them. And now I can actually move those edited sections around myself, giving me total control and the ability to really refine this and make it awesome. So my friends, that is the end of our session today. We talked about fixing common audio issues. So thank you so much for joining me. My name is Jason Levine. Hope you enjoyed this episode of How to Make Great Videos, Part 4, Fixing Common Audio Issues. And we will see you again next time. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.